Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about Andrew Jackson once again, and today we'll be focusing on the Bank War and the Panic of 1837. Here are your goals. Write them down. Okay, so let's start by talking about what the Bank of the United States was. To put it very simply, the Bank of the United States was a big deal. The Bank of the United States was the largest bank in the U.S. at this time, and it held much of the federal government's reserves of gold and silver. With this huge reserve of money, the bank was able to print paper money, and it was also able to offer loans so that Americans all over the United States could invest in land and railroads and factories. This helped the U.S. economy to grow while also remaining stable. And this seems like a good thing, but many Americans hated the bank. And so why did so many Americans hate the Bank of the United States when it seemed like it did some really good stuff for the country? Well, many Westerners hated the Bank of the United States for a couple reasons. A lot of poor Westerners were often owed lots of money to the bank. They had borrowed money from the bank to buy land, and now they owed a lot of money back to it. And sometimes they couldn't pay this debt back, and the bank would even take their land away. So a lot of Westerners viewed the bank as more of an enemy than a friend. Other Westerners also just kind of naturally distrusted the wealthy Easterners who ran the bank because they couldn't really identify with these people who lived so far away and lived very different lives. And finally, a lot of people felt that the bank was undemocratic because the voters never got to decide who ran the bank. The bank was run like other companies are run, where you don't get to really vote on who runs them. And Jackson, who claimed to represent the West, also hated the bank and wanted to get rid of it. All right, so this now takes us back to Henry Clay. And so all of this was important to Henry Clay because Henry Clay wanted to run for president against Jackson in 1832. And so basically, Henry Clay kicks off the bank war because he wanted to make Jackson look bad. And so here's what Clay did. He got Congress to pass a bill that would allow the Bank of the United States to stay in business for another 20 years. And Clay didn't really seem to care one way or the other about the bank. He just wanted to make Jackson look bad. And he thought that this would make Jackson look bad because it would put him in a corner. It would force Jackson either to sign the bill, and this would disappoint all of his supporters out west because he would be basically giving the thumbs up to 20 more years of the Bank of the United States, or Jackson could veto the bill and basically prevent the Bank of the United States from continuing to exist, and then he would lose the support of wealthy Easterners. So either way, Jackson would lose the support of an important group of voters. And this, Henry Clay, he thought, would help him to win the elections. In response to Clay's trickery. Well, Jackson just goes right ahead and vetoes the bill in order to prevent the bank from renewing its lease. And this move turns out to be massively popular in the West. Basically, a bunch of Westerners are really happy that Jackson decides to get rid of the bank. It also leads wealthy Easterners to support Henry Clay for the election of 1832, but Jackson, with his Western supporters, is able to crush them because he has massive popular support both in the West and the South. When Jackson wins re-election, he basically goes about destroying the bank, taking all government money out of the bank, which causes it to slowly collapse. So what happens when Jackson destroys the Bank of the United States? Well, most historians agree that it leads to a financial and economic collapse, a lot like the Panic of 1819. And so basically, the Bank of the United States was important because it had helped to stabilize the United States economy. By killing the bank, it destabilizes the economy. Basically sends the economy on like a roller coaster ride of going up really fast and going down really fast, which is not good for most people. This happens because government money goes out of the big bank of the United States and goes into lots of smaller banks. And all of these smaller banks start to loan out their money to unreliable borrowers. Some of the other banks start to print money, and all of this starts to decrease the value of paper money in general. Lots of different banks are making all kinds of different notes, and basically these notes become worthless because there are too many of them out there floating around. And this is bad. It basically leads eventually to a total financial meltdown because people start to demand their money back from these tiny little banks that can't pay it back. And the banking system breaks down, and then things get bad for a while. Things recover quickly, but for a little while, things are really bad in the United States, and a lot of people are out of work and lose their savings and all sorts of stuff. Yeah, and so this is basically because Jackson got rid of the bank. What's the significance of this whole story about the bank? Well, there are two big things that I want you guys to take out of this. One is that the bank war shows the increasing power of the president. And we can see this in the way that Andrew Jackson uses his veto to fight Congress. Basically, back before Jackson, presidents only ever used their veto when they believed that Congress was trying to pass an unconstitutional law. Jackson, on the other hand, didn't really believe that the bank bill was unconstitutional. He vetoed it not because it was unconstitutional, but because he disagreed with it. And this was a new thing. Presidents before had not done that, but Jackson sets the precedent that presidents are allowed to veto bills just because they don't like them. And this earned Jackson a lot of criticism. People argued that he was behaving more like a king than a president. But this is a power that later presidents adopted and that now they use quite frequently. The other big result, besides the increasing power of the president, was the reemergence of the two-party system. So we used to have a two-party system back when there were the Republicans and the Federalists, but that broke down after the War of 1812. And for a while we only had Republicans. But now, with the Panic of 1830, the bank war, we see the emergence of two distinct parties. One is the Democrats, who are led by Jackson, and these guys oppose the bank and demand westward expansion. And these guys get most of their support from the West and the South. On the other hand, there are the Whigs, and these guys are led by Henry Clay. And the Whigs demand a new Bank of the United States and also promote the American system. So the old Republican Party had already started to split, but it splits into two totally different parties because of the bank war and the disagreement between the Democrats and the Whigs. So that's our takeaway from the video for today. Thanks for paying attention, and we will go over it tomorrow in class.